High above the shifting grey waters of Loch Ness stands the broken skeleton of Boleskine House. Once a grand and stately manor, now a blackened shell marked by ruin, fire and whispered dread. The house may lie in quiet disrepair, but something older than brick and timber lingers here. Heavy is the mist that curls across the loch below. To the untrained eye, it may seem an abandoned relic, but for those who know its story, Boleskine is a place where boundaries wear thin, where the veil between the living and the dead, the real and the unimaginable, has been dangerously weakened. Even before its most infamous residents arrived, the land itself bore scars of the strange and the spectral. Local legend spoke of an ancient kirk that once stood upon this very site. When its priest was laid to rest, his body was said to have been disturbed, and the dead would no longer lie quiet in the earth. Reports of spectral figures wandering the hillside at dusk were whispered from generation to generation, long before the house was built. From the first stone laid, Boleskine was ill-starred. But its true notoriety began in 1899, when Aleister Crowley, poet, mountaineer, magician and self-proclaimed Great Beast, purchased the estate. Here, in these lonely and windswept halls, Crowley intended to undertake the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage, an ancient and perilous ritual said to summon the holy guardian angel. Yet the rite carried a darker edge. To succeed, Crowley would first have to summon and banish a host of elemental spirits, demons and chaotic forces. The working was to last 6 months or more, demanding absolute isolation and discipline. But Crowley, ever restless, never completed the ritual. Distracted by affairs elsewhere, he left Boleskine with the rite unfinished, its doors to other realms possibly left wide, gaping open. In later years, he would hint darkly that something had slipped through, something that should not have. Whether the chaos that followed was the result of this broken working, or merely the fevered imagination of those who came after, remains a matter of debate. But those who lived and worked within the house knew Boleskine was no ordinary place. For decades, the house's dark reputation simmered, known only to occultists and the curious. Then in the 1970s, it became famous once more, when Led Zeppelin's enigmatic guitarist, Jimmy Page, a serious student of Crowley's writings, purchased the manor. But even Page, fascinated as he was by the house's occult heritage, rarely stayed. Instead, he left the estate in the care of his friend, Malcolm Dent. It was Dent who suffered the worst of what Boleskine had to offer. Almost immediately, the house seemed to awaken. Doors opened and slammed of their own accord, sometimes with such violence that the echoes rattled through every room. Heavy rugs were found mysteriously piled high in corners, their weight too great for any natural force to explain. Furniture scraped and shifted in the night. Strange gusts of icy wind swept through sealed corridors. Most chilling of all was the unseen presence that paced outside Dent's bedroom door. Heavy footfalls accompanied by a low, animalistic snorting, as if some monstrous beast, part spirit, part nightmare, lurched restlessly in the hall. Then there were the objects that moved without touch or cause. On one occasion, a small porcelain figure of the devil, which had rested innocuously on the mantel, rose slowly into the air. For a long, frozen moment, it hung there, spinning silently, before shattering violently in the fireplace below. But perhaps the strangest episode of all involved a set of antique chairs that Jimmy Page had imported from London's Café Royal. Each chair bore a brass plate engraved with the name of a famous patron. Oddly, each morning, Dent discovered that the chairs, labelled Aleister Crowley and Marie Lloyd, had mysteriously swapped places. It was only after some investigation that he realised the nameplates had been affixed to the wrong chairs during shipping. Somehow, impossibly, the house itself had corrected the mistake. Or rather, something within the house had noticed and refused to let the error stand. As Dent's time at Boleskine dragged on, the disturbances grew more intense. Toward the end of his stay in the early 1990s, as he prepared to leave the cursed manor for good, a disembodied voice, low, commanding, filled with presence, rang out through the airless room. "What are you doing?" That voice, Dent would later insist, came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was the final straw. Soon after, Page sold the property. But Boleskine was far from finished. In December 2015, flames devoured the house, gutting it to its very bones. The cause of the fire was never fully explained. Locals muttered that the spirits had turned on the building itself, purging it of its human taint, or perhaps warning off those who dared to trespass. Then in July 2019, what little remained was consumed again by another blaze. Two fires, 4 years apart, without clear cause. Some claimed the land beneath Boleskine had grown restless, the dead uneasy, the old wound reopened. Even now, Boleskine House endures a ruin of stone and shadow, half restored, half haunted. A scar on the landscape, a monument to unseen forces. And yet the curious still come. Tourists, pilgrims, occultists, ghost hunters, they gather at the rusting gates, peering into the skeletal remains of the house, hoping for a glimpse of the forbidden or the supernatural. Some claim to feel a presence watching them from the empty windows. Others report an oppressive weight in the air, as if the house itself were breathing softly, waiting. But none dare remain after nightfall. For when the last light fades from the lock, the darkness rises in the hollow shell of Boleskine House. The old stories stir again, and the dead, as they say, do not sleep easy here.